As with some 100,000s of other anime fans, I have been watching Dungeon Meshi, and as with many of those fans, I have been utterly enamored by Ryoko Kui's love of wizardry, ecology, and cooking that just oozes from between every nook and cranny of her world. And that put me in mind of a concept I have long believed to be true. The best art comes from the intersection of passion and skill. But why is this the case? And what do shows like Dungeon Meshi teach us about the creative process?
Just a quick addition before we get started on this video, the voiceover is all over the place. We tried 2 different mics, 3 different locations, and I think 20 different takes for some of these lines. So, you know, we've been struggling to get a good level of consistency. Don't worry about it, the video is still great. Keep watching, swear to God. Let's start with the skill part of this idea first. While skill isn't quantifiable in any sort of quantitative way, it is something that can be recognized and analyzed. When it comes specifically to art, skill is still too broad. So, because we're primarily an anime and manga channel, let's narrow it down to just the people who make manga. Mangaka. Perspective, proportion, realism, stylization, halftone use, character design, paneling, line art, coloring, layout, narrative, story, structure, character motivation. Not so narrow. Well, already we can see that mangaka have to be multidisciplined. Of course, there are some mangaka who only do the art or only do the story, but there are still so many skills in each of these roles. Some mangaka excel at one of these skills, or even a whole host of them. Other mangaka excel at knowing how to use the skills they're good at to compensate for their weaker areas. It's not uncommon for an artist and writer to work together on a manga, and while the two will overlap a little, divvying up those skills can make a better whole. Like Oshinoko, which combines the artistic skill of Mengo Yokoyari, the creator of Scum's Wish, and the narrative skill from Aka Akasaka, the creator of Lover's War. Skills are expressions of years of hard work and knowledge that we as a society describe in one term. We can split hairs even further. An artist who's good at character design might be so due to their robust understanding of 3D space, using that to create accurate perspective from any angle, such as with Bocchi's characters in Sun Ken Rock, which have an incredibly realistic weight to them. Or they may have a good understanding of shape language and comedic timing to convey emotion, like Kiyohiko Azuma does in Yotsubato. Just a quick addition, by the way. Look at these backgrounds, they look incredible, oh my god. Or maybe they just seem really good at character design, because they excel at one specific part of human anatomy, such as with Junji Ito's amazing hair quality, masking a lot of same-facedness in his designs. But then we can start to err into the territory of something becoming a trademark instead. In Junji Ito's case, the care and detail of his work are so unique that the simpler faces allow for a surrealistic flatness of emotion, primed to be broken when characters are corrupted or monstrous. Playing to your skills like this is also a skill. If you only have so much time to create a piece of art, then prioritizing what's going to give the best result is an application of your knowledge, understanding of the medium, and your own strengths. We at Mary Kiwi are very bad at this. We get caught up in ideas that we lack the skill or motivation to execute on, but we also understand that about ourselves. So, if one of us wants to use their newfound skill of making cutscenes in RPG Maker, or spend days doing data analysis, then that ends up in the video. Because hey, at least it's something useful. Kinda. Plus, a half-finished project or an idea you can't yet execute on can become a finished project months or years down the line. Like our previous video on Shin-chan, that was genuinely years in the making, with the original script being from November 2022 and discussions happening much longer before that. But we made it! It came back to us because we understood that at the time we just didn't know what to do with it, and wasting time worrying about that wouldn't have been worthwhile. Wow, I am so lightheaded.
Anyway, a better way to describe skill would be that it's the physical part of creating art. The rehearsed muscles, movements, and process. Physical is pretty vague here. It's the stuff that comes from your body, so it's your thought processes as well, because as much as they try to pretend not to be, our brains are a physical part of us. Defining a skill is almost as hard as developing a skill, because we can break something as simple as being skilled at drawing vehicles into so many other little pieces. Let's look at Akira Toriyama, who's known for many things, and also this exact skill. The level of detail between the vehicle and characters is immediately noticeable. with the black hair still being detailed but willing to have large swaths of black colour. Meanwhile, the car has almost none of this except for on the very underside, because it's pulling from a higher level of realism. The little specks to show the plasticky headlights, scuff marks on the trim, and meticulously accurate peripherals makes it obvious that this is a man who loved and understood vehicles. Now, not to say Toriyama was only skilled at vehicles, far from it in fact, but his passion for all things on wheels really is obvious when you look at art like this. And this. And this. But then we look at the proportions, which are completely off for a vehicle like this. The way it arcs like it's bouncing, the stubby front, and how oddly tall it is, helps make this not just a car, but a cartoon car. It moves like it's its own character, with bounce and stretch, and is proportioned to fit the disproportionate characters using it. I could go on, but as we can see, skills are just terms we use to make things easier to conceptualize. Perspective is a defined thing, but the skill of using perspective in art is a little more abstract. In this regard, I'm using skill as a shorthand for the internal artistic decision and ability an artist has. So from this weird analogy, we can describe passion as being external to the body.
But what is passion? Well, for the sake of this theory, a passion is something outside of your art that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be all-consuming, but it's there and a distinct thing from your art. It's passion as in a passion, as opposed to the feeling of being passionate. You can absolutely have passion towards your art, but that's an even more scary third axis to this whole thing that maybe we will touch on. And this type of passion can even be a different art form. Oh god, this is getting convoluted.
Let's start by looking at Satoru Nihei with construction and design in Blame. Originally, Nihei worked for a construction firm in New York, but decided to quit to study design at a New York school, before finally moving back to Japan to pursue manga as a career. This formal training is incredibly evident in his work, with the huge intricacies of the city's megastructures covering the span of countries or even further. This is a cold and empty world of concrete and steel that almost errs into the organic. Very familiar to anyone who's been to an industrial district and felt a yearning for some kind of other organism, even the smallest sprout between cracks. Or the inside of an empty warehouse, with its I-beams overhead like the ribs of some sort of beast. His understanding of how to put these structures together helps him imagine how to take them apart, and rearrange them into something much more foreboding and not of our world. There's also a good understanding of the medium of manga, as these are depicted in grayscale and use light and dark to show an exceedingly open space or claustrophobic mess of wires. The craftsmanship made it very hard for me to get into the animated film adaptation as someone who adores the original manga. It just felt wrong to see this world in colour, and then the kinda messy CG destroyed any other desire I might have had to continue watching.
But let's look at Hirohiko Araki's love of fashion with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. If you've seen anything JoJo, you will have noticed the elaborate and bizarre clothing designs. The poses are inspired directly from fashion magazines, with an elaborate use of limb placement to accentuate the draping and construction of garments. Something that comes across as equally eye-catching in the manga. Specifically, a lot of this comes from avant-garde runway fashion, where wearability is a secondary concern. This is about pushing the boundaries of what clothing is, and if you're just drawing, you don't even need to worry about suitably covering your model's nipples. This passion even went full circle when Araki worked with designers like Gucci to design posters to be hung in Gucci stores. He also collaborated with Japanese fashion house Hameo Pose to create a runway line inspired by various characters from JoJo, as well as clothing and accessories available to the general public. It's a very respectful and reciprocal relationship between inspiration, passion, and skill, as well as taking advantage of what you're good at to get across something you love.
Finally, let's look at Tsubasa Yamaguchi's passion for painting in Blue Period. In this interview with Yamaguchi, she displays both a passion for paintings and their artists, as well as an understanding of her own interests and skills, deciding to use other people's work in Blue Period to create an accurate variety of art for different characters, but also foregoing oil painting to focus on manga. She knows what she wants to create and still uses that passion for painting to influence the art she makes. It's super cool, but passions can also be something other than art. It could be chemistry like in Dr. Stone, somewhat accurate, much in the same way that Food Wars is with gastronomy. There's a little bit of wiggle room for some fun shonen antics. Of course, it isn't just shonen that influences this intersection of passion and skill. Even genre conventions will influence this, But let's focus. Eurocamp is a great example of a very obvious passion. Camping, and is part of a few subgenres that excel at a singular passion being explored through manga and anime, those being iyashikei and cute girls doing cute things. Both are often aimed at an adult male audience, and so are seinen in demographic, but because of this they tend to dive into passions befitting those older men. Motorbikes in Superclub, camping in Eurocamp, alcohol in Bartender, and depression in March Comes In Like a Lion. These all have plots that go heavily into the specifics of these passions. And for the older women, there's fashion in Paradise Kiss, fashion in Princess Jellyfish, and fashion in Itahen. Just kidding, there are other topics for older women, like music, makeup, and murder. Of course these shows can absolutely appeal to people outside their demographic, just by the nature of this immense passion. If you like camping, or bikes, or cooking, or depression, there's a whole genre of shows just about people enjoying those things. And isn't that so lovely? For me, I think that's the crux of this whole concept. Seeing how much someone loves something. The best art is from the intersection of passion and skill, but great art can still be found as long as you're passionate. The best example is One Punch Man, a web manga so beloved that its art was assumed to be a part of the parody and not the creator's actual skill. When you enjoy the thing an anime is about, and can tell that the creators enjoy it too, it's just so perfect. And if it's a beautifully, technically brilliant piece of art on top of all that, well, that's just heavenly. Often when that passion is lacking, the audience might feel it. Sure, it's pretty, but you can just tell that whoever wrote this didn't interact with the subject in any meaningful way, and all those little errors stop feeling like adjustments for a good story, and just come from a lack of respect. But luckily, most of these passion anime don't do this, so we get to be positive for once. So anyway, I've been really into Shangri-La Frontier at the moment. Something about the accurate depiction of MMOs and a main character who enjoys god-awful games. As a passionate lover of the worst quality manga, I can relate. I adore badly translated, unintelligible, weird manga that barely makes sense and has ambiguous endings. Not to mention low-budget horror films and online posts made by weirdos who adore something I've never heard of. Some Recker is my sort of guy. The excitement he feels finally playing something good, but still wanting to go back to that delicious low-quality trash, because you can mold it to your own enjoyment and find some sort of diamond in that roughness. If he was a woman, he'd be writing niche rare pair fanfiction. The dub in particular is so full of an appreciation for gaming and gamers, including the cringe dialogue and mostly up-to-date slang.
You did! Go for my head, I parry protect! Nice try, Robo-Samurai!
I just adore how our main characters have different motivations for getting into trash games and the main game, Shangri-La Frontier. Entertainment, pushing your limits, escapism. Each character we meet fully uses the gap between reality and these advanced full-body VR MMOs as an expression of their desires and peculiarities. And all of this has the great backdrop of a well-fleshed-out game world. Much like Bofri, I was immediately struck by a sense that at least someone making decisions here has played a video game. Unlike game isekais, these aren't parallel worlds, but something constrained within the physics of what a game can and can't do. Because it's just a video game, our characters get to metagame and consider the intent of the creators. Yes, this is an advanced world with maglev trains and full-body VR technology, but someone somewhere had to program this game and write this flavor text. So all those little pieces of art that go into a game are relevant and of value here. Artists admiring artists. How beautiful. How lovely. Even the second opening has a direct callback to the first opening. It just makes me so happy. The relationships between characters and the way that straddles the online world and reality is a delight to see. A shy, naive girl who has a crush on our main character is a giant paladin in the game world, and her bashful nature comes across as an overly formal, powerful being. The super cool and popular model is a maniac player killer who craves fun and domination over the strict rules of this virtual world. She's drawn to these guys who are as equally as weird as she is, in a safe world where repercussions only mean so much and no one knows who you are. A guy who enjoys fucking around with people and making them underestimate him by playing a cutesy feminine character. And finally, our main character is a bored teenager, full of yearning for fun and just something that excites him and pushes his boundaries. We even get to see some of the developers who created this game, and while it does lean into a little bit of auteur theory by depicting a single narrative designer and a single game everything else? We also get a fun interaction with the poor producer in charge of managing these artists.
You can basically ignore their titles in this anime because he's very clearly a producer with how he functions in the company, and she's very clearly not a producer because she's messing with the stats of NPCs. So, you know, you can take our word for it, or not, whatever.
The shift from a villain into a stress-ridiculed middleman is beautiful, truly in the spirit of video game development. These are characters that could only come from someone who understands the online world and how it affects behavior and relationships. Unlike you, Mamoru Hosoda, but we'll get back to that later. Anonymity is a key part of these relationships.
Actually, it's pronounced anonymity.
As each character has some amount of control over who they are and how they are known. I'm sure a lot of us have experienced discovering a beloved online friend has a child or a wife, and vice versa, an IRL friend is secretly a YouTuber with 100k subs. My goal in life is to be in that second category, and you can help by subscribing to this here YouTube channel. Maybe even giving the video a like and a comment for that sweet engagement. Fun fact of the day, YouTubers aren't kidding when they say comments are important. We've seen a video gain a few hundred extra views because someone decided to leave a comment. The algorithm saw that and went, ooh, this must be good, someone commented, and then showed it to more people. But back to MMOs, because passion for MMOs and gaming can take many kinds of forms. From real games being used in stories like Gamers and High School Girl, to Log Horizon's interesting combination of complex game mechanics and a trapped in a video game story. Your passions will inspire you to create, and your skills inform what you can create and how you do it. Ali Sakina, Tono Mamare, and Katrina were all inspired by video games, but the execution of those passions are all very different. It could be the mechanics, or the interaction with the real world, maybe even how a game world would actually be experienced if you lived in it. A lot of game isekais just make them the same generic, Germanic, Franco-British mishmash of medieval settings.
This can be to a show's benefit, if it's being used as a narrative shorthand to explore larger concepts. Isekai Izakaya comes to mind as having this typical generic isekai setting, but because that's all out of the way, we can focus on the relationships between the characters, the isekai character, and the food, which is the main passion of the show. It specifically explores the way these medieval people experience Japanese cuisine as a way to explain these dishes, which is really good if you have little experience with Japanese cooking. The anime also dives into the cultural and political aspects of food, with the heavy use of fish being something these inland people don't experience often, let alone so fresh. Of course, our izakaya owner is cheating by directly importing his produce from modern-day Japan with its fancy methods of keeping food cool. And then, at the end of each episode, there's a live-action segment demonstrating actually cooking the dish or exploring its real-world context in a real izakaya. Each of these sections is hosted by one of two people, a chef and a comedian, who each bring their own passion to these segments, that being cooking and eating respectively. It's so clear that Semikawa Natsuya, the author of the original light novel, loves Japanese cooking and wants to explore it in a new setting. Therme Rome does something similar, with the mangaka going to similar locations from the episode in a little live-action segment at the end, where she does a drawing inspired by the events of that episode. Getting to hear the thought process of an artist is a fun palate cleanser. It also provides a deeper understanding of the passions on display. Fiction can be a great way to explore a concept in a safe, easy to understand space, and then by bringing it back to reality, you get a nice confirmation of what you've learned, and how it functions in reality. Truly the best of both worlds. I would love to see more anime take this approach, because for these education-based passion shows, it's a really great learning system.
Interestingly, it puts me in mind of the YouTube channel Honest Guide, a Prague-based channel that explores scams aimed at tourists as well as platforming interesting locations. But in particular, every video ends with a language lesson where an applicable Czech word is taught. They're not wholly useful, but it's a good way of helping bring back the episode to a core part of the channel's ethos, which is a love of Czechia and its culture.
Hey, so why don't we do that?
Okay, sure. Our weeb word of the day is iyashike, a word you've already heard us use a few times. Iyashi in Japanese means healing. The K part is a suffix denoting something as part of a group or system, like in the Japanese subculture Visual Kei. And so, the term iyashike refers to a group of anime or manga that help heal you. They're designed to help relax a stressed out salaryman, so the settings will be idyllic, often in the countryside, and there'll be little to no conflict, which is so great. I love iyashike, and I'm not even a salaryman. So this video has taken a long time to make. So long in fact that by the time this is out, we will be at Hyper Japan selling our stickers and more stickers. So if you're going to be at Hyper Japan on the 19th, 20th and 21st of July, come say hi, and if you're subscribed you get to play our 2P machine for free. Now on with the video.
So now we've defined and explored what is passion and what is skill. Let's look at the key part of this theory, how they intersect. You know, like the title. The reason we developed this theory was because we both noticed the presence and absence of things other than art in people's work while at university studying game art. A lot of the people in our class solely worked towards improving their art, and their art was technically really good, but it was the people who had some kind of tertiary interest that made interesting art. From this, I began to look outside of my peers to professionals and found similar patterns. A lot of the art I enjoyed didn't need to be the best, it just needed to have some level of resonance, where I felt that the creators and I had some shared understanding or love of a part of it.
In fact, while at uni, I became incredibly depressed and tried to use this emotional connection to reinvigorate my love for the course. I did this by watching New Game, which is about a girl getting into the games industry. Having that further understanding made the anime all the more enjoyable, and its cute girls doing cute things vibe was comforting at a time when I felt hopeless. It genuinely got me through some dark times, and I think if it had been a shallow understanding of the industry, it wouldn't have had such a positive effect on me. But being able to laugh at the legally distinct Autodesk sire and relate to Alba's struggle with learning how to become an artist are things that stuck with me long after I finished the season. Inversely, Belle's understanding of online communities and video games was so confusing and inconsistent that we made a video essay on it before we were even video essayists. Normally this is where we'd say go watch that video, but it's 2 years old and we can do better now. Although, as with that video, this section will be very spoilery because this really needs the full context to understand how badly executed this film was. The main gist of the problem is that the whole film felt like the creator had never experienced the internet, from overnight online success to almost no focus on the intersection of internet identity and reality. It was hard to believe that this was by Mamoru Hosoda, one of like 3 directors capable of getting an original anime movie played in worldwide cinemas. Being able to hide your identity is a great way to address and deal with trauma in a narrative. In Belle's case, our main character Suzu is grieving the loss of her mother, which has left her unable to sing. Except this is almost a footnote in the story, as she's immediately able to sing as much as she wants with no issues. In fact, her fear of her real identity being found out comes across as almost nonsensical. We never actually get to understand her motivation for that secrecy. Of course we could guess. Perhaps she fears it'll make her unable to sing again, and bring up her trauma of watching her mother die in front of her. But there's actually nothing to indicate this. So most of the plot is actually about the other main character, Beast. A lot of the driving force of Belle's story is that if you act up in the magical online world of you, some sort of virtual furry police squad will rip away your avatar and reveal who you really are. Why does that exist? And what sort of policy agreement does this VR world have you sign? It just comes across as more of a fantasy idea than a sci-fi near-future game world. Especially considering in the world of Belle, you don't actually get to choose your avatar. It's assigned to you. So which is it? Is your you avatar your real self? Or the full body scan they seemingly take when you sign up? Contrast this to Shangri-La Frontier, where each game shows our main characters as different avatars, and making that avatar is a key part of the show. It's mostly for comedy, but it does help build on who the people behind these avatars are. Maybe Belle wanted to go for a what's truly inside you sort of thing, but basically only Suzu and a few others are humanoid. Everyone else is some cute mascot style character. It almost feels like canonically in universe, all these people are just NPC background characters for Suzu's story. And this unfortunately means our Beast is a scary monster with a cape of bruises, which is a very, very poor way to handle a victim of child abuse. If it was some sort of internalized fear or power fantasy, that could be cool, but it's not, because we've been told that you avatars are your true self. Belle is secretly pretty and perfect on the inside, and the Beast is a monster. A smarter film might have made this some kind of commentary on how societal systems view victims of abuse, but this is not a smart film. That would require understanding the passion of your story instead of using it as window dressing. At no point point did it feel like this was a film that should have had several scenes of children cowering in fear from an abusive father, let alone resolving it by telling a 14-year-old to just fight back against physical abuse because abusers are actually just cowards on the inside. Cowards who will beat you until you fear for your life and the life of your younger sibling. That's why the Cape of Bruises exists, by the way. His bruises are on his back because he covers his younger brother's body so he won't be beaten. This is a film about finding your true self through online anonymity. Can you say it for me?
Online anonymity.
Anonymity. Thank you. Maybe if it had focused on only that and simplified the virtual world elements to better accommodate a sincere depiction of trauma in the online age, it could have been amazing. If there had only been one main character, either Belle or the Beast, instead of a ham-fisted attempt at a Beauty and the Beast allegory. Hiding online to escape trauma, or just to escape in general, is foundational to a lot of sci-fi media, and people's contemporary lived experiences. It doesn't need to be overly deep, but it should make sense. With Suzu, we have the current trend of VTubers, where an online avatar can help overcome personal issues to make a community because you're separate from yourself. And with the Beast, we have communities of victims who have a safe place to raise their voice, or find resources to help escape or cope with their situations. Every little plot hole in Belle was only made worse by the poor understanding of how VR games should work. If it isn't something you expect your audience to infer from prior knowledge, you have to give them that information, and it seemed like Belle didn't either. Sadly, this is a film best enjoyed as pretty gift sets and music videos on YouTube, because if you even slightly know how to use a computer, it'll annoy you too much to enjoy its core message of how you should abandon children with their abusers. Belle, to us, at least, reads like it was written by a man who thought it'd be cool to rehash Beauty and the Beast with Summer Wars, but didn't have the knowledge or passion towards either of the subject matters. Which is crazy, considering Summer Wars was directed by him. The screenplay, however, was written by Satoko Okudera, a woman who clearly cares a hell of a lot more about online spaces. So maybe that's what this missed. Someone to rein him in or add their perspective. Because passion doesn't have to be an auteur thing. A group of people can share a passion and use their individual skills to make something better than any one of them could. Like Death Note, Strange Scaffold, and Mary Kiwi.
But back to the anime we started with, Dungeon Meshi. The world of Dungeon Meshi is coherent, and builds on its thematic ideals from start to finish, at least as far as the first season is concerned. The finale outright says as much, but it wouldn't be so impactful if all the steps along the way weren't bursting with so much passion. There is no singular, obvious passion here, and that's par of the course with most pieces of art. It's just that often there tends to be one strong or obvious one, which we've touched on in some of our examples, but humans aren't so one-dimensional. We'd like to go passion by passion in Dungeon Meshi and explore how these contribute to such an overwhelmingly detailed and beloved show. Now we've only watched the anime and dubbed at that, so this will be specific to our experience. And as it's the anime, we'd like to explore some of the passions contributed by the people responsible for making this show as amazing as it is.
First up, the obvious one. Cooking. It's so obvious, in fact, that each episode is named for the meal cooked in it, and often there are at least two distinct and plot-relevant dishes being served up. The meals in Dungeon Meshi are often about the process of getting to the final product instead of the finished dish. Strange animals bring strange problems to be solved. How do you eat something you've never seen? How do you prepare it so everyone in the group likes it? These are all considered and relevant to the characters' emotions and relationships. The offering of food is often the beginning or end of characters meeting each other and holds significance in breaking down the barriers between them. The word companion comes from the Latin for together with and bread. These are people who break bread with one another, and sharing the bread is an act of welcoming acceptance. It's even more serious in the dungeon as resources are limited, and choosing to give up some of your provisions could be deadly. Our main group are learning to be self-sufficient in the dungeon, adapting their cooking to its natural resources, and so can spare the energy to build relationships where other adventurers may have to be self-serving and callous. The cooking in Dungeon Meshi is as mechanical as it is sociological. Food is a vessel for calories and life, but also for connections to be built upon. Tied closely to cooking is ecology. The creatures of the dungeon have a lot of ties to traditional mythology, but the passion here is in understanding how these illogical beings would really function. If a creature is a chimera, how does each part interact? And if you cooked it, would each half be a different meat? There's thought in the behaviour and biology of everything we see on screen. The reason it feels like a passion is there's an approach to ecology that's firmly rooted in curiosity when it comes to Dungeon Meshi. Our main crew often have to work out on the fly what and how something exists. Monsters have weaknesses grounded in reality, and how they function, be that luring a creature into a trap, working out a weak point, or just a way to approach it without dying. This passion once again feeds back into the character motivations and story beats with an expert grace. They need to progress down the dungeon, a beastie stops them in some way, they deduce how to defeat the beastie, they work out how to cook it to be the most delicious. Most of these steps tend to fall in a certain character's realm of knowledge, but equally they may differ or bicker. Early on we see this with Senshi and Marcel coming to disagreements on how to pick a mandrake without dying. Both of them only have secondhand information, but are unfamiliar to one another, so don't quite trust the other's approach. The beginning episodes do a great job in emphasizing each of our main four's strengths and ability to be useful through their understanding of the dungeon's ecology. Leos is a well-read, obsessive monster freak. Senshi has practical experience in this particular dungeon, Marcel is studious and has a lot of academic dungeon knowledge, and Chilchuk has a good understanding of traps and how the surface dwellers have become part of this dungeon's ecology. All of them have information that is needed at some time or another, and even understand this world in different ways. Often when something is deduced or explained, it is done for a specific audience-friendly way regardless of the character. But in Dungeon Meshi, it really feels like the right character with the right knowledge sharing information to other characters instead of us, the audience. There is no one audience proxy, because they all have and don't have information, which makes them feel a lot more balanced than if any singular one of them was the de facto explainy guy. Ryoko Kuri's passion for ecology and cooking as disciplines with varied approaches and expressions adds infinite depth to her world and characters. It should be noted that a big part of this quality comes from the fact that Dungeon Meshi is a monthly serialization, with its 97 chapters being published over a 9-year period in the seinen publication Hata. Hata has also published some other big titles like Sakamoto Desuga and Migi Todali, both of which also went on to get anime adaptations. They also only publish 10 issues a year and have serializations that only appear in 6 out of those 10. This is a small publication, so presumably part of this is due to keeping a low budget, but they're clearly able to produce some really high quality manga from this system. The weekly manga format, while good for readers, is definitely a negative for mangaka, who have to keep grueling schedules to reach uncomfortably tight deadlines. And personally, even as a reader, I don't mind monthly. I've been reading Tower Dungeon by Satomo Nihei, and even though it's released monthly, I'm still somehow 4 chapters behind. Giving artists time is the #1 way you can get a good quality piece of art by the end of it. The second is giving them enough money to live. And part of living is to experience a wide array of things beyond the 4 walls of your office. You know, so they can develop their passions, not just their skills.
And this applies to every step of the production process, including adaptation. The passions of the animators, script writers, and voice actors also come through. The script writer for episode 8 of Dungeon Meshi is Kimiko Ueno, who was also responsible for the overall series composition. In a panel at Manchester Comic Con, she spoke about this exact idea, saying that she prefers to work in cafes or at home instead of being confined to an office day after day. Ueno was also responsible for writing the script for several episodes of Space Dandy, despite not being a big fan of sci-fi. She instead pulled on other things that intrigued her, like escaping the mundanity in the time loop episode. This episode is one of the highest rated episodes across both the seasons of Space Dandy and one of my personal favorites. The grounded nature of this episode definitely appealed to people. In a Reddit thread on the episode, people were able to pull on ideas of rural-urban migration, working a normal 9-to-5 job, and parent-child conflicts. These aren't necessarily passions, but they're definitely an example of a personal connection improving the emotional response to a piece of media. When preparing for the role of Laos, Kentaro Kumagi looked inwards for how he could relate to the character. They're both older brothers, and that's about it. The English dub actor Damien Hass, on the other hand, clearly relates to the potential neurodivergence Laos has. Although, once again, autism and being an older brother isn't exactly a passion. However, Sungwon Cho, the voice actor of Senshi, was a passionate fan of the Dungeon Meshi manga before getting the role, which is much closer to this video's thesis, thankfully. He's also spoken about enjoying playing a character without a visible mouth, allowing him to really flex his voice acting muscles. Honestly, if you watched it subbed, I would highly recommend giving the dub a shot. Every voice actor is giving it their all, especially Emily Rudd, who dramatically improves as a voice actress over the course of the show. It's really fun to watch. When it comes to adaptation, being a fan of the original work could definitely be a passion. The Fifth Element by Luke Benson is an iconic film, but his adaptation of Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets was a lifelong passion project for the director, who was a fan of the comics as a child. A passion can absolutely be another piece of media by our definition of it being external to you. I won't get into the line between passion and plagiarism, there's a great Tomska video that does that for us. And it's not really a tangent for this video, considering how long it's taken to make. Maybe another time. Finally, let's look at how Studio Trigger's passion plays into this adaptation. The director Yoshiro Miyajima was also the director of the short created to celebrate a volume release, and was very excited to get to direct a full anime adaptation. Miyajima recommended the voice actors read the manga to get a feel for their characters. A skill of understanding how to lead and direct is a skill after all.
I suppose I should answer the question that is somewhat baked into this idea, and that you may be asking yourself, why does this matter? Not all art needs to be the greatest. That's something we actually talk a lot about on this channel. Nor does all art need to be for everyone, and personal interpretation can make you see different passions compared to someone else. So far, I hope I've made it clear that this needs to be based on some kind of mutual understanding between artist and audience. Expecting people to look up interviews, or even understand every type of art and passion, is way too much to put on someone just to get a piece of art. To me, the point of this is you need to experience scales of media on varying axes. Technically, brilliant art gives you a deeper understanding into the medium, and a good sense for what is and isn't well developed. Being able to notice good animation is something a lot of people are not that good at. The whole 60 FPS interpolated thing and all that. Watch some early 2000s trash and get a good understanding of why those little chibi versions that barely move help free up time and budget for cool emotional scenes, but still have an inherent quality and charm to them. Art that you dislike helps you calibrate your sense of taste, even if you don't finish the show. Reflect on why you stopped watching and how to recognize if something else is or isn't going that way too. It could be as simple as just not liking a particular trope or subject matter, but being aware of how those function in context. Maybe this isekai is just a little too generic and brings nothing new. Or maybe you can sense that something is different this time, and maybe there'll be a subversion. Media that's about something you love but made poorly can help you identify what it is about that passion that matters to you. Apparently, I'm highly sensitive to pop science, as I still have a vendetta against my friends dragging me to the cinema to watch Lucy, even though I detested and complained repeatedly to them about the humans only use 10% of their brain advertising it used.
I think you just like being right.
And finally, art that is skilled and accurately presents your passion fulfills the higher social needs of being seen and understood, as well as just being enjoyable. Coming out of a good film can feel calm and satisfying, or it can have you rambling for 20 minutes about everything you loved about it. Just knowing someone out there, somewhere, also loves something you love, and you aren't alone. I love trash films because they're dumb fun, and I love music that's a bit bad. I find the emotion in trying to convey something, even if you're not perfect, is all the more impactful. As long as you're passionate about something, you can use that as fuel to inspire your art. And that's why the best art comes from the intersection of passion and skill. But not all art needs to be the best. Thanks for coming to our TED Talk. Good night. Well, actually, before, it would be super cool if you could give this video a like, maybe subscribe, because we'll hopefully make some more videos in less than 2 months. And you know, like, turn on alerts because we are not predictable. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Oh, wait, and if you can't make it to Hyper Japan this weekend, we do also sell our stickers on our Ko-fi, so check that out.